Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Easy Does It, a podcast created specifically for the amazing members of the MJ team. Rob and I are back with you again, excited for another great episode.
Let's go.
As usual, we'll have some do's news for you, and then we'll jump into our topic. And actually, today, the do's news and the topic are perfectly aligned. I can't wait. But we're going to go back to the grab bag of questions for this week so you can learn a little bit more. Not that you cared about these random answers to these questions for me and Rob, but it's fun nonetheless.
You know, like 2 minutes ago when we're doing the questions, I was excited. Now I'm dreading it because I don't know what you're about to ask me.
I will say last week our last episode with Corey, really one of my favorite parts of the whole thing was him talking about Xena, Warrior Princess.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It was so great.
I didn't see that coming. I didn't know that.
No,
that was going to be his jam.
No, not in a million years. That was one of my favorite parts. So hopefully people are still enjoying hearing us talk about this stuff.
I need to text him a picture of her, like a Giphy or something like that, and just say nothing past it. Just
wonder if we could get like a picture of him and a picture of her.
Dude, we could do that, or we could get like an action figure, like find an old Xena action figure and just put it on his desk. He'll know where it came from.
Maybe we could put the bobblehead of Dewey with Xena.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it would be a whole thing.
That'll work.
Okay. Do you want to pick or do you want me to pick?
Go ahead. You're good.
All right, if I pick one that I don't like, I'm going to put it back.
Okay. She didn't put it back.
I didn't put it back. And I haven't really thought this one through, but I'm going to say we're just going to go with it. Okay. Which famous person, dead or alive, would you like by your side during the zombie apocalypse?
You said famous person, dead or alive.
Yes.
Dang. Can I have a few?
I'll let you have a team. Yes.
Okay. Number one, right off the bat, of course you have to have Daryl from The Walking Dead. I mean, you've seen The Walking Dead?
No.
It's not even scary. It's good.
I have heard Rock Chick Natalie Moore.
Yeah,
believe it or not.
Yeah.
She is
shout out.
She is a Walking Dead, or she watched it.
I knew I liked her.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Cool. Me and Nat are cool.
Yeah.
So Daryl is the guy that has the bow and arrow, the crossbow.
Uh-huh.
I know you've probably seen pictures.
Yes.
He's super popular. I mean, he was in Boondock Saints.
I have seen.
Dude is like the man.
Michael loves that movie.
So he would be number one, and his weapon of choice with the crossbow is perfect. It's quiet. It's reusable ammo. It's just
far
smart.
away.
I mean, they're not running at you, so
that's right. They walk.
You can be
pretty
slow. Close. Yeah.
Okay.
Now when they go into like some of these other movies, what is it called? Zombie Land. That one, the first one, they're kind of moving kind of fast, and as it goes on, they get faster and faster and gets creepier and creepier. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of a funny movie. That's Woody Harrelson.
Oh.
I mean, I think I would probably bring him along just for fun because, I mean, how are you not having fun with him? And then number two would probably be Jocko. I think, not even a question. Like he would be in there.
It's funny that you say that because I just taught the conflict class this week, and we start out the class with these questions.
Did you?
And that's who Matt Todd chose.
Heck yeah! Mm-hmm. Oh, Matty Todd, the toddler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jocko. I mean, you would probably survive just fine because he has so many skills and is just the bomb.
Uh-huh.
He'd see a zombie coming. He'd say, "Get after it." I'd be like, "Yes, sir." And then Daryl would be great. And then Woody. Oh, Woody. Mm-hmm. I can't remember his name of his character in that. Woody Harrelson, just for fun. Mm-hmm. I mean, you'd have a good time. How about you?
That's a good team.
It is a good team.
I don't know a lot of people because that would help me in this situation because I don't watch a lot of movies that would give me a lot of choices. Like I go directly to like Thor. Maybe for not the right reasons.
You saw him in the last movie. If y'all have seen the final one, Love and Thunder, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And she does too. You know he doesn't have those powers in real life, right?
That's okay.
Okay. I see where we're going here.
It's not about the powers.
Okay.
No, but I would say, yeah, I think I might just stick with Thor.
I think his wife, what is it, Elsa Pataki or whatever her name is, I think she might have a problem with that.
Probably.
She might come along.
Probably.
The first time I ever saw her was from Fast and the Furious, and I had no idea. I was like, okay, I see you. And then I haven't seen her in any other movies, and then I was like, oh, of course she's married to Thor.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yep.
What was it, Chris Hemsworth? And then his brother, I didn't even know he had a brother. Why are you looking at me like that? She's like, yes, I know who he is too. Do you know his name?
Liam.
I see where we're at now. I see where you're at.
He's whatchamacallit in the Hunger Games. Oh, the one that she likes back in her section.
Oh, I didn't even connect that.
Yeah, not the one that goes into the Hunger Games.
I know you're talking about.
Yeah.
He's not Pita.
That's right. He's not Pita. Dang, what's his name in the Hunger Games? Anyway, that's him.
That guy. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. Here's what I'm going to tell you about the zombie apocalypse. I'm not making it out.
Not with that attitude.
I am going to be just paralyzed with fear. Now, if I have to take care of my children, maybe it's a little bit different if I'm like responsible for getting them out alive too. I do feel like I would bring another sense of I'd bring a little more sense of urgency to the table, but yeah, I mean, if I've been talking with Darren and Jeff about when I go on a walk, I am just terrified that a snake is gonna jump out at me, fall out from a tree. So let's be honest. If I am at that place when I go on a walk in my neighborhood about snakes, then how on earth am I going to make it through the zombie apocalypse?
Because you have to. It's a necessity. There's still snakes in the zombie apocalypse. Trust me, they're still out there.
Great. Great. Yeah. So, might as well have Thor there and just...
You may not live long, but you'll live happy.
That's right. Just live happy. Yep.
I feel like I've been preparing for the zombie apocalypse for forever, but like seeing all those movies, I'm like, oh, definitely.
Yes.
This is what I would do.
I can see you being in your zone.
Oh, I would
for
be
real.
I would be locked in.
Yeah.
Go hit all the grocery stores before everybody else does.
I can totally see this.
I mean, you got to do the thing. Then you just go make your little shack out in the woods. The funny part is you watch all those shows and they're out in the woods a lot of times, and then like no one just goes in a tree. Like, why aren't you in a tree?
Because they can't climb.
Yeah.
There's like rules about these zombies.
For sure.
Okay.
They can't climb. They move slow in most of the movies.
Yeah.
Now, if they're moving fast, I mean, you still climb a tree. But, I mean, the unfortunate part, you got to do it when they're not around. You don't want to just climb a tree and just hang out because then they all show up and you're stranded.
Right.
But you just climb a tree quietly, hang out up there, and go back to the Hunger Games when Katniss ties herself to the tree up there so you don't fall out.
Yeah.
No brainer.
You've given this a lot of thought, I can tell.
Absolutely, I have. Absolutely. So, all right.
Okay, well, there we have it, folks. Don't come with me. If you need assistance during a zombie apocalypse, stick with Rob. Which, let's be clear, would anyone have wondered who they should be with if you had to choose?
I've given this long thought. This should be our question for this episode. Forget conflict. We should just say, who are you taking with you in the zombie apocalypse?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, we
can definitely do that. Okay, so we are going to jump into the Dues News. And as I've already promised, our Dues News today is going to tie directly to our topic for this week's episode, which is conflict. And so I'm going to do a little read aloud. I love to do that, from Mr. Jenkins Told Me. This is chapter 9. Mr. Jenkins told me conflict happens at intersections. So I'm going to read this to you. We'll talk a little bit about it, but maybe not too much, because it's exactly what we're going to talk about for the rest of the episode. Okay, so here we go. We're told as children that conflict is bad, and we believe it. But conflict is neither good nor bad. It's just a normal part of human interactions. How conflict is managed determines whether it's good or bad. Conflict is a reality. There is conflict in every relationship, but most people have never been taught how to confront conflict and deal with it. When you've taught your people how to deal with conflict, friction declines, productivity accelerates, people learn to appreciate each other, and your whole organization leaps forward. Because now we get to hear both sides. We have two perspectives and two viewpoints. And people learn they don't have to be silent. They have an opinion, they have good thoughts, and their opinion and their thoughts matter. Mr. Jenkins told me crashes occur at intersections. If you look at traffic flow, that's where most of the crashes occur. And it's the same thing in business. Conflict occurs at intersections, where one person is passing work over to the next person, or one department is passing work over to another department. In the air conditioning business, this can be where a salesperson has sold the job and now they're passing it over to the installation team, and the installers say, "You didn't give us all the information. That's why we were unprepared when we arrived." Or it can be any one of the 1,000 other situations where one person becomes frustrated by the actions of another. The way to handle conflict is to be assertive. So here's what we tell our people. Number 1, don't be a victim. Number 2, don't be a schoolyard bully either. Number 3, say, you have needs and I have needs too. Let's figure out how we can both get what we need. When you're assertive, you're saying, hey, I'm playing in this game too. You've got to respect me. You've got to listen to me. When you learn to be assertive and confront conflict, you develop respect for yourself and you build deep relationships with your coworkers. The key is to make sure that everyone in the company has received exactly the same training. If friction among coworkers rises to the level of management, it's time to reinforce healthy interaction. And then, when everyone is back on track again, celebrate. Oh, Dewey. Oh, Dewey.
Dewey.
All right, what are your thoughts on conflicts happening at intersections?
Well, of course, I like that excerpt because it is so true. You see that in business all the time, whether you work here at Morris-Jenkins or you're just listening and you work somewhere else. Once you recognize that, you start to see it all the time. Mm-hmm. And that could be intersections between departments, which is typically the most common one. You see it popping up between sales and install. You'll see it between CSRs, and you can even see between CSRs and dispatch. It's just like, hey, we were supposed to book the call in this way, and then it didn't get booked exactly the way it needed to be, and then we end up sending it to the wrong person. But the technician only sees dispatch sent me this call. Mm-hmm. And so you start to see where problems arise. And of course, it's not your fault. It's theirs, right? So intersections absolutely is where it happens. And you even see that in your relationships. You see that in, your marriage. You have your life, your spouse has their life. You're intersecting those lives. You've become married. Mm-hmm. Of course, there is an intersection there. But how you plan to both tackle something may not always be the same. And where it can get challenging is when you're both passionate about something. Me and my wife, when we were looking at sending our kids to school, we were trying to decide, do we send them to public school? Our church has its own school. And so we were talking about that. And I remember that was one of the first times that we had like a big talk around what we were going to do. And I was like, just send them to public school. It'll be fine. And she's like, I don't know how I feel about that. My wife was homeschooled quite a bit, and it was like, no, I don't want to homeschool, but I want to send them maybe here. And I'm like, no. And in my mind, I'm like, I actually told her one time, I was like, I went to public school. I turned out just fine. And she gave me a look, and I was like, that's straight disrespect. Straight disrespect. And so we both were very passionate about the talk, but in the end, we went through all the pros and the cons. I went and toured the school with her, and our kids didn't end up going to public school. And I mean, it was the best decision we've made for our kids. Mm-hmm. I mean, you want to set your kids up in the best way possible, if you can. And I mean, I had to really check myself because I felt passionately about it too, and she did too. Yeah. So, thinking about what do you want out of the relationship is important. And hey, you've got views, I've got views. Hash it out. Mm-hmm. So there's so many truths in what you read. Yeah, absolutely. And maybe before we get too far down this dude's news rabbit hole, because I feel like there's so many things that he talked about here, maybe we should back up. And I can ask you my first question. Usually the question we always start with when we are discussing a new topic is, what is conflict? When I look at conflict, essentially it's just like when a goal, you have a goal of something or something needs to be accomplished, someone else needs to get it there. It's basically when you don't see eye to eye with somebody. Mm-hmm. It could be when something falls short and there needs to be some type of accountability that can be there. Sometimes it just can be like, It could be a difference of opinion, an unmet expectation. I mean, can be so many things. Just basically when something is supposed to go one way and it doesn't go the way that you think it's going to, whether that be having a person involved or something. But just typically I find the most often it's just unmet expectations. A tech expects them to get this call. It didn't show up the way it's supposed to. CSRs are supposed to book a call a certain way. Dispatch receives it and it's like, hey, this is wrong. There was an expectation that's supposed to be met and it hasn't been met. And so you have to make the determination, do I handle it in the moment, or do I handle this, or do I just let it go? So there's challenges that come with even both of those actions.
Yeah. So I think I just said this earlier, but I just taught the class on conflict to a group of folks here this week. And the reason that I did that, for those of you that may not know, is that conflict, or managing conflict, to build a dynamic organization, to use Dewey's exact words, that's one of our fundamentals. Is conflict was so important, so crucial, so critical that Mr. Jenkins decided to make it one of those 6 fundamentals that we focus on when we're working on running this business or managing this business. And so that's why we have a class built around this whole idea of conflict, is because I do believe, and Dewey says this, or Jonathan says this, and Mr. Jenkins told me, is that we aren't taught how to navigate conflict. And so if we aren't taught that, and we don't have the skills for it, then we just ignore it, or we try to avoid it, or let it kind of work itself out. And so that's one reason why we have that class here, is so we can start to manage and work through that. So the book that we use for this fundamental is When Goliaths Clash by Howard Gutman. It's in the library if you're interested in reading it. But so the definition, because I just have to get a definition from somewhere besides right from my head. The definition that they give in When Goliaths Clash for conflict is the condition where the needs and desires of 2 or more parties appear to be incompatible. So I'll read that again because I need to hear it again. The condition where the needs and desires of 2 or more parties appear to be incompatible. And when we do the class, I put that word appear in all capital letters, because I do think a lot of times a conflict begins when we appear to be at odds in our wants and needs and desires in a certain situation. And I think that's where our conflict skills come in handy, is where we can take it from something that doesn't look like we can solve it, or it looks like it's going to ruffle feathers, or it looks like it's going to have a negative outcome. It might look that way, but if we use the right skills, then we can navigate through that, and it doesn't have to be incompatible. We can figure out a way to move forward if everybody can get what they need to say out on the floor. Did
you guys unpack the appears word that you wrote up there?
Yeah, we talk about how it when it looks that way, we don't want to just be like, oh, well, it's not going to work. We have to really dig in deep and recognize why it's important that we just don't brush it to the side, sweep it under the rug, hope that it goes away. One thing we talk about in the class too is how conflict can be destructive and conflict can be productive. And we want the productive after effects of conflict. We want those here at Morris-Jenkins, right? Because it's bigger, more levels of trust. It's more creative thoughts. It's innovation. It's everybody rowing in the same direction. And so we can only get those things if we're okay with navigating that conflict.
Yeah, and I think when you said appears, it stood out to me in that a lot of times when we look at it, I see it in one particular way, and it seems like they just completely don't get it. Mm-hmm. I had a conversation with another individual yesterday, and what my thinking on the whole deal was, and I know I can be regimented in my mind. I feel like I'm decently flexible, but at the same time, when it comes to teaching and the things that we do all the time, I'm like, hey, we have a standard. This is the way it needs to be. And the other individual was thinking outside the box on how we can be more flexible with it. And it was really interesting because I was reading the Think Again book last night, And they give the example of Orville and Wilbur Wright with their biplane, or not the biplane. Is that a biplane? Whatever, the very first airplane. And they said in the book that they actually were really, really good at arguing with each other. They did it all the time, but they actually came from a culture of their family of arguing was fine. And it didn't mean anything. It's just like how you work through stuff. And what I found was interesting was one argument they had is about the propeller. Did you that hit me hard. So they said that they were arguing about how they were going to have the propeller set up, what kind of format they were going to use, and they were going back and forth and they were raging. They argue all day and then they went to bed, they came back, they started the argument again the next morning, and the people watching it, or the individual watching this, is just like, how are they doing this? And the argument led to the fact that they both agreed that you can't just have one propeller, it needed to be two. And they had to spin in different directions in order to get this thing off the ground. And I was like, what? The argument led to a better product. And like you said, we want the product of the conflict at the end, but you have to work through it. So the appearance of going through conflict, I mean, we a lot of times want to avoid it. You don't want to do it. But knowing that, hey, just their viewpoint, I need to understand that a little bit better. I want to know where they're coming from with that, because clearly when people feel a certain way and you don't feel that way, there's a reason why they feel that. Some people just argue to argue. Right. But more times than not, most people have a vantage point on something, and they may see something you don't. And if you're not open to hearing where they're coming from, then you're just drawing a line in the sand and you're trying to convince somebody to come over to your side, which, I mean, that's not going to lead to a productive outcome at the end.
Yeah, a quote that I put up on the board during the conflict class is from Dale Carnegie: "A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still." And I think that's exactly, kind of what you're talking about, is when we're not open to receiving another person's opinion, we just want to preach our opinion or our side or whatever that is. And then I think that's so true. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. That person's not changing their mind if you're not even willing to be open and responsive to what their side of the story is or what their perspective is. Yeah. And so I think it's important for us to remember that, because when we're in a conversation and I'm finding myself doing all the talking or not asking any questions or not doing any listening, then am I really making any headway with the person across from me? And I'm pretty sure that the answer most of the time is no, because just because a person nods their heads and says yes doesn't mean that you've moved them over or moved their thinking. Right. Not if you're not willing to listen to what they have to say as well.
Yeah, usually when people are just not, you could tell when they're not listening to what you're saying. They almost look glazed over, or they're like moving their mouth as almost like they're just waiting for you to stop. And I used to do that, and I still find myself doing that. I'm like, oh, I have a point to make. Reading this book, Think Again, if you guys haven't read it before, it's a good one. Did you realize, were you in our group? I don't think you were in our group.
Yeah, about the water?
Yeah.
I thought it was a blue flame.
Yeah, the picture on the front is a match lit, and it's a blue flame. But last time I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's water on it. So the book's called Think Again. It just does exactly what the book says, the title. But reading through it, it was so interesting seeing their comparisons with debaters, and you actually get to read a dialogue for debate. And what I found was interesting is the better debaters asked more questions along the way versus just making their points. And there's a graph that it uses, says what skilled negotiators do differently. And the first bar set, there's two things. It's average negotiators, skilled negotiators, and the tallest bar is at 38%. And they find common ground, versus an average negotiator only finds 11% of common ground. And that's mind blowing, thinking, how can I lean into that? What is this other person saying? Like, where are they coming from? And what do we actually agree on? That individual I was talking to yesterday, after reading this last night, I'm like, crap, we both want this company to be successful. It's really his team. I want his team to be successful. And I'm sure we could both talk about, well, what do we want out of this? We want a good technician. We want this. We want that. How can we figure out figure out how to move forward with this.
Yeah. It's we talked a little bit about that in the class as well, is that at the end of the day, particularly here at work and even at home, here at work, we can almost always come to this mutual purpose or this agreed upon outcome because we all are on the same team at the end of the day. We all want to take care of the customer. We all want to make it as easy as we can for the customer. We've agreed to that. That's the purpose of this business. And so a lot of times when there's differences of opinion or conflicts or disagreements on how to move forward, I think that it is super important to come back to that piece. What is it that we really want? Because a lot of the times we actually want the same thing. At the end of the day, we want the same thing. And so it's not so much about what we want, it's how can we get there?
Right.
And so I think that puts you on a little bit different track when you start saying, okay, what we really want is a well-rounded technician. That's what I want. That's what you want. So what decisions can we make about how to move forward that support that? And because I really do think that we probably disagree with less than we actually think we do.
Less than we think, yeah. For sure.
Yeah, so I think that it's finding that common ground, and I think a lot of times finding the common ground comes from asking the questions. Because if you're not willing to be a scientist, like he says in the book, if you're not willing to be a scientist and look and ask and think differently, then it's going to be difficult to get to the common ground.
For sure. I'm not going to get on a political talk here, but you were just saying that we probably agree on more than we think and disagree on less than we think. And if you even look at if you have a political debate, what do we want? We want the nation to be great, right? We want it to progress. We want good things to happen, prosper. And so we all want that. It's just, how are we going to get there? And sometimes we're splitting hairs on certain things, and other things are a little bit more, visceral, and you feel more passionately about it, which is fine. But it's, what do we want? And I think when you start with that mindset, anytime you're talking to somebody or you're trying to work through something, it's, what is the end game goal here? What are we trying to achieve through this? And how much does that disarm the other person? You're not doing it to get them. It's just like, hey, what do we want here? If you can walk through what do we both want out of this and talk through that, it actually brings that heightened conflict down to a more manageable level. And ultimately, we think better when we're not in rage mode.
Yeah.
If you're in rage mode, you are not thinking right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's the case at home too. What if you're in a disagreement with your spouse or even with one of your children, I think going back to that same thing, at the end of the day, what do Michael and I want? We want the same things. And so if we find ourselves not behaving that way, then how do we get back on track? That's something that comes from Crucial Conversations, also in the library. Think Again is also in the library.
There's only two because I have one.
So you have to come up here and fight Rob for his copy. But one of the things that they talk about during Crucial Conversations is to ask yourself the question, what do I want for myself? What do I want for the other person? What do I want for this relationship? And then asking yourself, am I acting like that right now?
Right.
So if what I really want is for Michael and I to make the best decisions for our kids so that they can grow up to be, productive, kind individuals, I know that that's what we both want, but when we're having a conversation or an argument or a disagreement about whatever it is, am I acting like that's what I want? Because sometimes, maybe most times, and I think this is true of a lot of people, our emotions take over. And just like you were saying, if you're raging, our emotions take over. We are emotional people. We've talked about that on here. I feel like it comes up quite often. No matter how logical you feel that you are, we're all emotional beings. So when someone disagrees or says something that challenges a belief we have, that feels like you trying to say something about who I am as a person.
Yeah.
And that will get your back up straight in a hot second. And so I think it's important to always ask yourself, am I acting like what I want to get out of this conversation? Because if you're not, then you need to take a step back. We talked about in class about, if we don't feel like if we're not contributing to the dialogue anymore, we talk a lot about dialogue. So in crucial conversations, they call it the pool of shared meaning. So you have your pool, it's like above your head. This is how I picture this in my mind. You have your pool of meaning above your head. And in your pool, you have all of your past experiences, everything that has made you Rob to this date. I have my pool above my head, and it's everything that makes me me to date. And so when we have a conflict or we're having this kind of conversation, what we want to do is we want to create a pool right in the middle of us. And I want to put things from my pool of meaning in there, and you put things from your pool of meaning in there. Now we have a shared pool of meaning right here in front of us. And if you get to a place in a conversation where neither one of us we're no longer sharing to the pool of shared meaning, we've either gone to silence, like, okay, right.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
You're right.
That's fine. Right? That's silence. We're not actually silent, but we're not contributing anymore to the pool of meaning. Or violence, not physical, actual violence, but like that's when we start maybe name calling or saying things that we wish we could take back. If we get to that place, then we need to call a timeout. We need to say we're not getting anywhere with this. One of us is going to say something that we don't mean. So can we pause here? But then this is the most important part. Then you have to say, when are we going to circle back? Do you need 30 minutes? Do you need an hour? Do we need to revisit this tomorrow at lunchtime?
30 days.
No, sir. 30 days is too long. So it can't be days and days.
Yeah.
Because really when we say days and days out, what we hope is that it's going to go away.
Yeah, forget it. Yeah.
But you and the other person have to say, hey, let's circle back in 30 minutes. I'm going to go on a walk. I'm not going to call my sister and complain about whatever conversation Michael and I just had, because all that does is keep me in the death spiral, right? Of like this negative thinking. And so I'm going to go on a walk. I'm going to clear my head. When we come back, we're going to circle back, and we're going to have this conversation in a different place than we are right now. You can't tap out. We can't tap out of the hard conversations because they're important. And so I think if you recognize that you're not contributing anymore, it's okay to call a timeout and say, when can we circle back?
Yeah. So much in what you said.
I just dropped like.
So much goodness. I had to write a couple things down because I didn't want to forget. Your comment from the book, what do I want for this person, is, if you really think about how often are you in a conversation, in a conflict with someone, and you're thinking, I really care about this person, and I really want them to be successful, or I just really care about this person and I care for our relationship. And usually when you're in those conflict moments, it's like, I'm going to jack you up right now.
I'm about to win.
Right. And so it's not often we think that. And as I was reading last night, I was thinking about my conversation yesterday with this individual, and that wasn't on my mind. I was like, I need to win this conversation. And we both walked out. We were cool. We were both laughing and everything. We were having it's interesting when you can laugh through conflict. But we both walked out disagreeing with each other.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately it's their department. It was his decision. It's fine. But I'm ultimately walking out. I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah.
But it's okay to disagree, but you need to have a resolution. And I walked out and I told him, hey, I disagree, but I support you. And I'll make sure that it happens. And that's how it should be. You walk out of there, even if you don't agree with what decision we're making, it's, I 100% support this because this is the obligation that I have. I've got your back. That's an okay place to be. But thinking through that conversation, reflecting after it yesterday, that wasn't on my mind of what do I want for this other person. I care about this person and the success of this place, but I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking I want to win.
Yeah.
Which I would say is pretty common thought.
Oh, yes.
You're going through conflict with somebody. It's like, I'm going to show you. from the Think Again book, I thought it was interesting with the points. They have the picture of the scale, and usually we want to load a bunch of points down. It's this, and it's this, and it's this. And it's interesting. The scale picture had one side, it said one strong point, and then you had a bunch of weak points. And typically the more weak points you give, it disvalidates. I don't think that's a word. Devaluates. Disvaluates.
Yeah.
It's in Webster's. It just takes that original point and makes it weaker. Meanwhile, you can have two heavy, strong points and roll with it, and sometimes that's worth more in conversation. It's seemingly more. Something else you said that hit hard was thinking, hey, if I did something, it's me. I made this decision. And so you almost say that it is me. And it's important for us to recognize if you have done some bad work, things didn't turn out well, there were some unmet expectations, and someone's maybe giving you some constructive criticism, or they're holding you accountable or whatever, you have to separate your work from the person. If you say, I did this is a part of me, you're making it a part of your identity. And you're saying, if I've done bad work, then I am bad. And that's when we talked about shame versus guilt. I am bad versus I've done something bad. If we don't separate those, our arguments can become even more visceral than they started, because it feels like a personal attack. And it's important to recognize if there's conflict there was an unmet expectation, or we didn't see eye to eye. It's unsolvable. But really it is. We can solve and work through this, but we have to separate our work from that. And if we think about our identity, the values that we have in our life that we've acquired up to this point, if someone is criticizing our work and we've taken that and made it a part of us, then you're saying that my values and who I am is wrong. We would defend that. Why wouldn't you defend that strongly with somebody? So that's a thought as we dive and move through this, is that you have to separate your works, the things that you do, from the identity of who you are, because they're not the same thing. If you can imagine living your entire life, your only self-worth as a human being would come from your works, that's not a good place to be. We are going to fail. That's going to be a part of that. And then that devalues you so much. They're completely different. And it can be challenging to separate those things if you haven't thought about it before.
I think that's so true. That he talks about in Think Again, the tension in the conversation is intellectual, not emotional. And so what that meant to me was, when you're having these sort of conflicts or disagreements or debates, that the tension in the conversation is because you're debating ideas and opinions and facts. You're not debating whether, I'm a good teacher, or I get my work done on time, or we're not debating those things. So I think that is a huge part of this, and I think it's really hard. I think it's incredibly difficult to separate those two things. Like we already said, we're emotional people. It's really hard to not personalize issues and to take them to heart. And so I think you have to be really thoughtful if you're doing that or not. Are you making the conversation about the ideas and the opinions and the thoughts and the processes, or are you making the conversation about the individual? Because if you're making the conversation about the individual, then the individual is going to take it personally. So keeping it in that avenue, he calls it, in 5 Dysfunctions, he calls it ideological conflict. I think he says there, I can't remember, he talks about 2 different types of conflict in Think Again as well, that made me think about this. Relational conflict, and
it was more about the product, or I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
About the project, it was about things.
Right. And so I think that's also really important, to keep it focused on the right thing, and the right thing to focus on is not the individual, it's the process or the idea or opinion that you're disagreeing on.
Right. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Oh, relationship conflict or task conflict, that's what it was.
Yep.
Arguing about the task, fine. Making it about relationships, people, you're not going to go very far.
Right.
Okay, my question for you, because I think we all deal with this. There's certain types of people that you just have the hardest time having conflict with. Is there a certain type of person or behavior type that just sends you over the edge when you're in conflict with them?
I think it goes back to what we've already kind of talked about. I have a difficult time when people are not receptive to any other ideas other than their own. Or you can tell that they're trying to maybe massage their words to say the same thing over and over and over again. And so I think that is the most difficult part for me in conflict, is when the other individual is not open to listening to a different perspective or open to another side. I think that bothers me. It bothers me when people interrupt. It bothers me when people try to in crucial conversations, that's what they call violence. People who are interrupting, dominating the conversation, using a lot of really extreme language, like "that'll never work," or "that's so stupid," like really strong language. And so that type of behavior is very off-putting for me.
Yeah, I can see that. I've interacted with many of those people. Drives me nuts too. Mm-hmm. I think the one, even going off of what you just said, the one that bothers me is the one that's already made up their mind. It doesn't matter what you say. Mm-hmm. You could be there for hours talking about it, and you both have a stance, and even if you're willing to hear what they're saying and you could see their vantage point, they're not willing to see your own. And that's so hard to deal with.
Yeah, and I think because he does talk about and think again, which I'm still having a hard time kind of wrapping my brain around how I feel about this. He basically says that we shouldn't end a discussion with agree to disagree.
Correct. Yep.
And so I was like, but what if you are talking to that person? And I guess it comes back to what we already talked about. I think it's maybe trying to reestablish common ground or mutual purpose, or even just saying, I think in a lot of these places, in a lot of these books we're talking about, I do think they encourage you to just be really transparent and honest about how you feel like the conversation's going. It's okay to look at that person and say, you know what, this conversation is really frustrating to me because I feel like I'm willing to look at your perspective and you're not willing to even consider mine. So maybe we need to both do some thinking and circle back tomorrow and see if we can make any more headway. I know that both of us want the same thing. It's for Morris-Jenkins to be successful. It's for us to be this family who, like your goals are the same. I know both of us want this, but we have to be able to listen to each other. So I think it's hard in the moment in conflict to be like, you know what? I'm feeling really frustrated. I'm feeling really angry. I'm feeling really hurt. It goes back to being vulnerable. And, but I do think that's the best way to handle that situation. And not saying agree to disagree, just saying, I feel frustrated. This is what I'm seeing. I don't know if that's the same way you're feeling. I really want us to find some common ground, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen today. Can we try this again another time? I don't know if maybe that's what he's saying. I have a hard time. I agree with him that we shouldn't just end a discussion on agree to disagree, because it goes back to a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still, especially if what it is important. But I also don't know how to always make headway in that situation.
If you come to a impasse where you both walk away without a decision, it seems like that's the perfect situation to circle back. Mm-hmm. But I think you have to set the intentionality that, hey, we didn't actually come to an agreement here, and we need to revisit this at a later date. Mm-hmm. Even if that's a couple hours, if that's a day or two, to really think through some things. But it would also be helpful walking away with an action plan. Yeah. Of willingness to look into the data more. Let's talk through what are the misses that we're talking about. To what we said earlier, what do we actually agree on here, and what are the impasses, and then how. Most things are not going to just be able to be binary. It's yes or no. We're going to go left or right. There's so much gray that falls into that, and in decisions, it's the exact same. So how can we come to some type of compromise or a thought of like, which way can we go? Which things are we willing which things am I willing to give up? Which things are you willing to adjust and give up as well? So I think if you walk away with action plans, that can be very helpful in that decision.
Yeah. Well, aren't you smart? Because at the end of crucial conversations, that's exactly what they say. I think the quote they use is, dialogue is not decision making. So sometimes we've had this conversation. It may have gone great. It may have gone not so great. And we're kind of at an agree to disagree moment. But then they talk about that's called move to action in the book. And basically you say to the other person, okay, this is where we're at. When we leave here, who's going to do what, by when, and then how are we going to follow up with one another? So I think that's a super easy way to keep that in your mind. Now, let's all be clear. When you're having this conversation, your brain is not going to be thinking correctly or exactly how you want it to be in this situation. That's why I think a lot of these little easy things to put in our toolkit are really important. So who does what by when, and how are we going to follow up? I think that if you know at the end of every conversation, I want to end it that way. Okay, what are we going to do when we leave here? I can commit to this. What can you commit to? And then when are we going to circle back or follow up with one another on whatever we've been looking into further?
For sure. I think it might have been I think it might have been in Goliath's Clash, one of them. I get those two books mixed in together, but it says in there when you're arguing with somebody, your blood in your body goes to your extremities because you're in fight mode, which is just how the body works. And where is it not? It is not in your brain, housing group.
Yep.
And so if you can intellectually understand that when I feel insulted or I feel upset about something, it's okay to recognize that. And what you were saying earlier, let them know I'm feeling frustrated by this. And it's okay to reset and circle back, my favorite phrase. But if you can realize in that moment, I can tell that I'm getting frustrated or upset or angry or whatever, and I know the blood is not in my brain, I need to take a couple of deep breaths and I need to find a way to bring myself back down. So if the blood's not in my brain, I am not going to say the things that I need to. And we all recognize when we're in argument with somebody, we don't typically say the things that we want to say. And you might say some things that can hurt the other person. Shallon, shout out Shallon. I'm not going to give her a jab. But she said something over and over again. Once you say it, you can't take it back. So if you insult somebody or you say something crazy or say something that you don't really mean, you can't take that back because you've thought it at some point. Do you remember good old Dane Cook from back in the day, the comedian? You said it early. You said something that triggered a thought earlier of insulting someone or saying something that you're just like, And he had the scene where he's having an argument with, I think, his girlfriend. And she's like, you know what? You're right. And he goes, when she starts agreeing with you, you're in trouble. He says when she kicks her leg out, she puts her hand on her hip and she's,
You know what?
And she's about to deliver the final blow. And she says, you know what? You're just like your father. And he's like, whatever. And he goes downstairs and he starts pacing. And he's like, it's like a little tic-tac of a grenade in the back of my brain. And then boom, it goes off. And my father was a great man. But I just think sometimes we say things, it's like, I shouldn't have said that. You can't take those things back. And so educating ourselves in conflict, we have to recognize how I approach this. What do I want for the other person? Thinking about what things we agree on, what questions can I ask to really truly understand. And I think if the other person can see that you're making strides to understand where they're coming from, they too will be willing to do that. And just like a lot of the things that we talk about on the show, the better you get at things, the more you recognize not everybody has the same tools that you do.
Yep. So
if you're willing to take the first step of understanding where the other person's coming from, naturally people want to reciprocate that typically. Mark had turned me on to Stoicism many years back, and I think he gets the Daily Stoic, like the little newsletter they send out. They send little things. Stoicism just essentially is being more reactionless, being more aware of what's going on, thinking things through. The reactionless piece, I find, is probably the most challenging. Somebody says something wild and crazy, or maybe they insult you, or a circumstance comes up that would normally make the average person frantic. Staying calm. And that's hard in a conversation. And I will tell you, that is a practice that I've been trying for a long time. I still fail at it because even though I was laughing in the discussion I was having yesterday, I was not being a stoic in that one by any means.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to be passionate about things. You can see that. But when I have been able to be more calm, I think better. And when the blood's not in your brain, you ain't going to be calm. But if you can calm yourself down or remain calm and just recognize we're just having a conversation here and talking through how we need to handle this, you find that you will be able to think much better. Mm-hmm. I tell Charlie when she goes on the mound, when she's pitching, because I can see her little shoulders get high when she's trying to pitch, and she's trying to pitch with high shoulders and her arm gets bent, the ball goes wild. And I'm like, hey, have fun. Mm-hmm. Relax. You're just pitching. It's just like the backyard. And when she's able to just have fun and just be chill about it, she pitches much better. Mm-hmm. But when that pressure's on and you're in the heat of an argument, a lot of that stuff goes out of the window.
Yeah. It's all about, going back to our brains and how amazing they are, it all goes back to self-preservation, right? That's what your brain is meant to do. It's meant to keep you alive. So if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I need to talk to you about this, immediately you start giving your brain the signals, alert, 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 we have a problem. And so your brain starts doing what it's meant to do, which is give you the tools to be able to fight, flight, freeze, whatever. I don't know if there's I thought it was like 2 F's. Now it's 4 F's.
It's freeze,
fight, flight, freeze, and fawn.
Fawn?
Yeah, that's like where you look at that's like where you do puppy dog eyes.
You do that? She's like, no.
I did just do the puppy dog eyes, though, so that he would know what I'm talking about. We'll just stick with fight or flight. But no, those high theoreticals out there, there's some other F's.
It's typically freeze, and then it's flight, and then it's fight. I do the little body language class, and I show a video. People are like, no, because it's a video. It's just like National Geographic deal, and it's a leopard coming in to get the gazelles, and everybody's like, Rob, why are you playing this? I'm like, just hang out. It doesn't turn out as bad as you think. But you see the leopard coming in, and the little gazelle like freezes with his, the eyeballs on the side of their head, so he turns his head sideways, and he's looking, and then he freezes and doesn't move. And the idea behind that is camouflage. If I don't move, it can't see me.
Yeah.
Then when the leopard's like, bro, I got your number. Then they try to run, and so the gazelle runs, and then he grabs a hold of him and pulls him down into this ditch that you can't see what's going on.
Oh, thank goodness.
And of course, the narrator has a wonderful accent. And then you see the gazelle like kicking the leopard, and then he's able to get away. And so that's how we typically are.
Yeah.
Now, I will say I've seen this in humans too. It sounds weird saying it like that. I've seen this in humans. I'm an alien.
I've been watching you
I've been
guys.
watching all of you. But you'll see that sometimes people fast forward through some of that. The freeze, they kind of like analyze that this is really happening right now, and it seems like they immediately go to fight, but they just blow right through the whole like flight piece. They're like, I'm not running. It's in there, but they just fast forward right through it, and that's why some people immediately fire right back at you.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just a repeated behavior that they've learned over time. And getting them to dial things back, it takes a lot of practice. Even the question for people that typically go straight to fight is like, are they okay, like analyzing and being aware that they go straight to fight, and how does that normally turn out for them? Clearly it's turned out enough times positively, quote unquote, for them that they keep doing it. I know sometimes we get phone calls from customers that may not be happy with the result, and I would be irritated too. But how can you disarm the situation and just say, hey, we're going to take care of you. We're going to figure this out. I just need to know what happened.
Yeah.
Walk me through what happened from your vantage point. It's hard to be on the phone. My CSRs, shout out. It's hard to be on the phone if somebody's upset. And you answer the phone and you get blasted right off the bat. It is hard not to want to defend yourself. But you're going to get through the call. It's going to be fine.
And I would imagine that to some extent that might be what the customer's expecting. So it goes back to what we kind of like, it disarms them when they come in hot and angry about something and they lay it all out to the CSR, and the CSR says, I really hate that. I hate that happened. We're going to get this taken care of for you. You know, immediately I can see the customer kind of being like,
you're not going to fight back?
Yeah, like kind of frozen for a second,
Yeah.
because I would imagine that most people probably anticipate there's going to be at least some defensiveness on the other end. So I think that is, it goes back to what about this wanting the same thing. We want our customers to be happy with the work that we do, and so we're going to take care of them in that way. But I think it's going back to what we were talking about. Sorry, don't get too theoreticals talking about freeze, flight,
We in
fawn.
Tangent City here. Tangent City. Bring it back.
We got to a National Geographic video. So I do think that it always makes me think about why can't we just say that? Why can't we just say, you know what, you've kind of taken me off guard with this conversation right now, and I'm feeling my neck get hot. I'm feeling my
It's the big vulnerable, man.
Yeah.
You got to be vulnerable to say that. It seems, my initial reaction as soon as you said that, it sounds weak. It sounds weak to say I'm feeling really flustered or upset, or I feel whatever, sad that we're whatever the statement would be. Why would you show weakness when somebody's trying to get you like that leopard?
Yeah. It's exactly what it is. Hence the reason why we did an episode on vulnerability.
Go back and watch it.
Because I do think it is, you know, if you came at me with like, listen, I need to talk to you about this. I don't appreciate the way that you whatever. I'm going to be like immediately neck splotches, stomach doing a thing. Like I'm just going to be, because those are my physical responses to feeling threatened. And so I feel like in that moment, why is it not okay for me to be like, okay, this is kind of taking me by surprise. I'm ready and willing to have this conversation with you. Can we back up a step and can I ask you a few questions?
Yeah.
Can we start over and can I take a breath before we go any further with this?
Do you think that you'd be willing to do that with me, but not with everybody?
Yes. And I think that comes down to trust.
Yeah.
I, first of all, don't think that you would approach a conversation like that with me, but I think that goes back to not everybody knows how to enter into a difficult conversation. So maybe somebody just going to come up to you and try and rip the Band-Aid off, and that's okay. You have to I think it's okay to say, "Whoa, this is kind of catching me out of the blue. Do you mind if I take a few minutes to just like get myself together and ask you a few questions about where you're coming from?" I think that's the sooner we can get into a mode where we're like asking questions and we bring our brains back online and we're not trying to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. If we're not in one of those modes and we can bring our brains back online to ask a question, then I think then we're in a much better place and we're in a better headspace to have that conversation.
For sure. Yeah, I don't think I would ever approach you like that, or really anybody on the team, or really anybody. But I do think that will we be approached by somebody like that at some point? For sure.
Yeah.
And it will catch you off guard because that's not always the norm. But I do think if we can dial back and recognize it's okay to be a little bit vulnerable and say, hey, like you said it really good. I'm kind of caught off guard here. Can we dial back, ask questions, or just say, hey, I'm kind of caught off guard here. If you can give me some of that information, let me get you some of those answers, then we can circle back. Mm-hmm. We can circle back and talk through that. I do think it's important that everyone understands that there's different types of communicators out there, and there's different types of conflict that can come up and how people handle that. In the book, it talks about, you have the assertive type, that it's my way and my way only. Like, this is the way it's going to be. And, maybe they're interrupting you. They're not letting you finish. We've all had that conversation. Then you have the non-aggressive. They don't really say much at all. They're just more passive about things. And they may not okay. Mm-hmm. And they're like, you just wait till I get out of this because you haven't convinced me a squat. Yeah. Right. And they'll hold it against you, which is really hard. What the books typically call for, what when Goliath Clash talk about, is being more assertive, which can be a little icky for some people of like, they may think it's aggressive. It's not aggressive. It's hearing what the other person has to say, making sure you're getting your own point out and try to come to some type of resolution. You're going to have to, if you're more of a passive type individual, if we go back to our S styles out there from DISC, you're going to have to be a little bit more vocal than you typically are. And that's okay. And you could even say that, hey, you know, I'm going to try to be a little bit more open and have harder conversations this time. So give me some grace. That's okay too. That's a very vulnerable statement to say.
Yeah.
But I think people give you grace when they see you're trying. You're trying to figure this out. When people are able to recognize and understand that you're making an attempt to alter some things and make sure that we come to a resolution, I think that's a piece of it. I came across something for those of you trying to figure out how can we be better listeners, some strategies on managing through this conflict. Those 3 types of communicators: aggressive, assertive, and then non-aggressive. Recognize, hey, assertive is the better way to be. But also there's some physical things that we can do. Of course, military folk, I like my acronyms. This one's called SOLER, SOLER. And so if I am trying to have a conversation with somebody, I'm trying to work on those physical techniques versus sit or stand squarely with somebody. So I want to show them and give them my full attention. Nothing's worse than somebody that's not really paying attention to you. And even in body language, they say the feet are the most truthful part of the body, which I was like, what? I always ask people, I'm like, what's the most truthful part of the body? Which one should you be reading? And everybody says the face. And I'm like, that's the most dishonest part of people's body. And you can even see it in kids. They lie with their face. You can see it. They learn how to do it at a young age, and we just get better at it as we go on. So sit or stand squarely. My feet should be facing the person. Show them that they have my full attention. Open posture. A common misconception is that crossed arms means that you're closed off, but a lot of people read it like that anyway. It could just be that you're cold or that's how you like to stand. But if my arms are crossed or I have closed off posture, I'm kind of turned away from people, it makes it look like I just don't care. And it's just going to exacerbate the situation. Leaning forward's another one, showing that you're interested in the conversation. Eye contact, that's a big one. Seeing that you understand where the person's coming from, you're connecting with them. And then the R is relaxed posture. Just like Charlie on the mound pitching, my shoulders are high. If I'm uptight, then generally I don't think always the best. And from the other person's perspective, it looks like I'm very uncomfortable, or it could come across as aggressive as well. So this whole deal can help out in those conversations with people of like, how can I be truly listening to people? This body language is great, but if you're not actually listening to what they're saying, you're going to miss so many key points. So something that you can think about, which I thought was kind of interesting, was something they call passive listening, which they say it's active listening, but passive listening, if you think active listening is highly involved, and if you're really active listening to somebody, it's probably one of the most exhausting things that you could possibly do. If I'm listening to what my wife's telling me about the day and I'm really listening to her, the lowest level of active listening or passive listening is just like listening, but I'm hearing her, but I'm not listening. The next level up is I'm listening to you and I'm digesting what you're saying, and I'm asking you questions to understand where you're coming from. And the highest level of active listening will be listening to understand, asking questions, and then paying attention to her tonality, how she feels about it, and her body language. Is she closed off? Can I tell she's uncomfortable about what she's telling me? Does her tone match the words that she's saying? And if they don't, then I can question into that and be like, it seems like there's something up with that. What's going on with that? So in a conversation with somebody, it's really hard to listen to everything they're saying. And if you know that you have common ground with somebody, if you're really listening into what they're saying, listening to understand, not to reply, then all of a sudden you start to pick up on the wide world of communication, which there's a lot more than just words. If I can really listen to that, I can glean a lot more information and find that common ground with somebody.
Yeah, and I want to say it's in When Goliaths Clash, he talks about how we're not really made for that type of listening. We're not made that way, which I think is, terrible, but
It's true.
But it's true.
Yeah.
And so I think when you're doing these things, like, it is literally something you have to, it's a choice you have to make. and it's something you have to practice. It doesn't happen. You don't do all of those things by happenstance, because we are meant to, going back to how our brains work and self-preservation, if I'm listening to you so I can respond. I'm listening to you so you can hear what I have to say. And so I think it takes a conscious effort, and I think we have to make the choice to be able to do or to practice those things so that we get better with those listening skills. Every time we have one of these conversations, am I looking for body language? Am I listening for tone? We talk about in the class as well, and I know you talk about these things, Rob, when you do service system, where obviously asking questions, I think they use AMP, AMPP as the acronym, asking questions, mirroring. So you say that you're not frustrated, but what I see in your body language is not that. Why is that? That's like looking in the mirror. I'm seeing what you're doing, or I'm seeing what you're saying. So that's the M. The P is paraphrase. So what I'm hearing you say is that, and then the last one is prime, and it's kind of like prime the pump is, that's what I kind of, I guess, correlate that to, is if you're having a hard time getting to the real issue, then priming the pump means like, okay, so what I'm thinking you mean is, and you just take a guess. What I'm thinking you're really upset about is this. Is that true? And so if that's a way you can get to the real issue, if they're not really saying what the real issue is.
Yeah. I really love labeling and mirroring. So mirroring in what you said is a different strategy from what like Never Split the Difference talks about. What you're talking about with that is it takes some practice. But hey, this is what I'm seeing. You can get so much farther in conversation and really peel back the onion on where they're feeling. And Never Split the Difference, he says mirroring in that form was just repeating back the last 1 to 3 words. And in that, it's basically saying, tell me more. And one of the strategies from When Goliaths Clash is literally just saying, say more about that. Can you tell me more about that? Now, I tell my techs all the time when you're talking to customers, you're trying to figure out, like, what's the real problem here? And if somebody says something interesting, you're not going to say more about that. It just sounds weird. You got to find it in your own way. But if you mirror it, somebody's like, man, it's just really hot in here. It's frustrating. It's frustrating, or it's real hot in here. Like, where's that coming from? If somebody's like, man, you always do this. It's always do this. And it basically is like, tell me more about that. You'll really get more information. You can't guide the conversation that way. The other thing he talks about in the book is labeling, and you use the phrases, it seems like, it sounds like, or it looks like. And that is another form of what you're saying with your mirroring, which is really guiding the conversation and saying maybe what it is. And sometimes you can even say what it's not. And you're probing the negative zone. Not negative isn't bad, but it's like, go ahead and say what it's not, and they will actually tell you what it is. So it's kind of a reverse psychology idea. And sometimes you can just say something ridiculous and like, no, it's not that. It's this. And you're like, perfect. Good.
That's what we were trying to get to.
I'm finally glad that we got here, right?
Yeah, though that reminds me of another strategy they give in Crucial Conversations, which I feel like we're just throwing out all kinds of strategies right now.
It's okay.
It's like rapid fire strategy time, is a don't do statement. And that's when you're trying to make your intention for the conversation really clear. So what I don't want to do is blank. What I do want to do is blank. So, for example, if I'm frustrated about things at home, then I might say something to Michael like, what I don't want to do is make you feel like I think you're not doing anything at the house. What I do want to do is to figure out how I can not feel like I have so many tabs open all the time. And it helps to be really clear and direct about what your intention or your motive is about having the conversation. Because if I bring up things like that, I'm not inside Michael's head. I don't know what he thinks, but I know that sometimes when he brings up things like that to me, the first thing I think of is, also, I don't do anything around here, right? So And let's be clear, all of us have had that thought in their head. I know I'm not the only one. But so instead of just letting the person think that, you just go ahead and disregard that right from the very beginning. What I don't want to do is blank. What I do want to do is blank. And so that gets you on the right path for having the right conversation, instead of that person feeling like you're trying to accuse them of something that you're not.
There's this, maybe this ties to that. My mind is spinning in that direction. There's a phrase or a quote that says, "We tend to generalize what we learn from our experiences, and these generalizations form our perceptions." Mm-hmm. And so in that situation where you're talking to Michael, this is what I don't want, but I'm just trying to find a way to make it feel like I don't have so many tabs open. Our perceptions of things are formed from those generalizations. What did we learn from our experiences? This probably isn't the first time that you've talked about it. And so it's like, I have these generalizations in my mind. They come from the experiences that I've seen. And so sometimes we tend to generalize that and form a type of character for this individual. And then that is something that we take into the conversation. And then that typically, it's like, it turns into the phrase, "You always do this," or "You never do this."
Yeah.
Which, let me just tell y'all from Conflict 101, if you say always and never to somebody, like we don't be, this isn't the Sith from Star Wars. We don't deal in absolutes. I can guarantee you, if you say that you always do this or never do this, you're gonna make somebody mad. Because if we look at those words, you're saying that this is your character, this is what you always do, and you never divert from this. And is that the truth? Not at all.
Right.
And if you're going to bring ideas into a conversation, you need to bring examples. Because if you just say you always do this, or this happens all the time, when was the last time that happened? I don't know. It's been 6 months, but it happens all the time. It's like, this sounds like it. Right. If you're coming in a conversation with a coworker, you have to think, what are the examples? Because if you don't give examples, you're generalizing things. And a lot of times we fudge over some of the other positives they've done, and you're only seeing the highlights. And if I'm looking, really they're lowlights. It's like, you do this, you did it here, you did it here, did it here. This is who they are. When in reality, they've done 10 positives. These are just the 3 negatives that they need to work on. And so I saw it in this interaction. I saw it in this interaction. How can we figure out how to fix this, right? For my managers or supervisors out there, the same thing. If you're coaching or leading somebody, and maybe there is some conflict there and you feel a certain type of way, bring proof, bring examples, help them understand how they can grow, because ultimately that person, you have to have their back. They're part of your team. And the common goal is you want that person to be better. You want them to grow. You want them to become a better version of themselves. And as a supervisor, as a manager, your job is to remove roadblocks, turn talent into performance. How can I do that for my teammate? I'm not going to be able to do that without giving them examples of how they may have fallen short and how they can get there, and knowing, how can I help you get there? Because that coaching moment is 2 ways. It's not just you got to work. It's how can I help you get there? That plays true at work, and that plays true at home in your relationships.
Yep. The old going in stories.
Oh man.
I think that's exactly what you're alluding to here,
Yeah.
is our going in stories. And I remember hearing Dewey talk about these going in stories, and we all have them. You are making up stories in your mind every day, all day long, about what you see and what you're internalizing around you. And then once you make up that story, you're looking for the things that confirm that your story's right.
Yep.
And so what we have to be really careful of is that we don't confuse our stories, because that's what they are, stories, with facts. Because our stories aren't facts, because a person doesn't always do this or never do that most of the time. And so I think really recognizing what are our going in stories before we step into a conversation. We need to know what we're bringing to the table, because we're bringing stuff to the table. We're fooling ourselves if we think we step into a conflict or a disagreement and we're not bringing everything that we've ever thought about this person, all the experiences we've had as individuals. We're bringing every single bit of that to the table when we have these difficult conversations.
Yeah.
So you have to recognize the going in stories, and then you also have to have the facts, which is kind of also what you were saying there. There's This is my favorite part of Crucial Conversations. They call it State My Path. And the S stands for share the facts. And so you start the conversation with facts. You don't start the conversation with your story because your story is just that. If you start with facts, it's much harder for people to say anything back to you. So let's say, for example, you were using an example with like a technician and a supervisor. So let's say that the technician has been late to a meeting. Maybe they had a customer call in that was upset about how their maintenance went or whatever. And so the supervisor or manager might be thinking, what the heck's going on? Like, he's being careless, not being thorough, not showing up. That's a story.
Right.
So if you're going to have that conversation with a technician, we would want to start with the facts. The facts are, you've been late to the past 2 meetings. That's true. We can't dispute that. Another fact is a customer called in and they were concerned about the level of maintenance they were provided when you were out. That's a fact. That happened. So then the T is tell your story. So the story I'm telling myself is that something else must be going on here because this is not your typical performance. And then the A is ask. So then you follow that up by saying, help me understand what's going on here. So I love tips and tools like that are easy for me to pull out in any given moment. So share your facts, tell your story, ask for the other person's story. You can do that in literally almost any situation where you have some facts. So start with the facts, then tell your story, then ask them to give their side of the story.
Right.
And so in the T and the E there, they are, T is talk tentatively. And what that means is don't come in there guns a-blazing with a really accusatory tone. Keep everything in a real curious place, like you're trying to figure this out together. And then I can't remember what the E is. It's like, it's not explore others' paths. They had to remind me about this in the class the other day. I know what it is. It just came to me. Encourage testing. That's what the E is. So it's like, is this what might be going on? Is this what might be going on?
Yeah.
So you're really showing them that you care about getting to the bottom of the issue.
Right. Tying right into that, if you're walking in and you're trying to coach somebody, your experiences that you've had with them, I mean, you're needing to coach them because of the experiences you've seen. Those experiences, you tie those back to what your knowledge is, what you've seen. Hey, I've seen you do this. But typically what we end up doing is we will generalize the comments. And if I don't start off first with what are the actual facts in this, then it is pure speculation and generalizations. And everybody just wants evidence. If I've messed up, tell me what I messed up. Well, you just seems like you've not been cleaning drain lines or you haven't been doing this.
Yeah, you haven't been doing your best.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Right. I need you to tell me what I need to do. I need to know exactly what it is. And if you're not coaching somebody and you're letting them run wild out there, you start to, those expectations of they're just going to do it again, those lead to confirmations. You're trying to find a way to confirm that my speculations are right with this person instead of figuring out what is going on with this person. How can I help them? Right. So we all need to be mindful. If I'm walking into a coaching conversation, I need to know what do I want for this person? What do I want for the relationship? How do I want them to walk out of here? Like, what is the goal here? Find the common ground. But we need to be very mindful of generalizations because those can be really dangerous. And that's not even just a coaching conversation. If I'm having conflict with somebody and I generalize comments without bringing evidence, it makes it really, really tough.
Yeah.
I was talking to Jack and Charlie last night. We had a fun family moment about telling the truth and all the things. It was a big moment, and I don't think little Jackie boy, love that man. He's my boy. I don't think he understood like what we were talking about in the whole situation about making sure you tell the truth. And he immediately will typically deny, which I've seen in kids all the time. Hey, who did this over here? Not me. Like not even thinking about it. It was you. Sometimes it was funny. One time, Susie watches him and he comes straight in from playing. He sits down to eat some spaghetti, and she's like, "Do you wash your hands?" He's like, "Of course." Or he's like, "Yeah." It's like she didn't even like finish the statement. Yeah. Like, did you wash your hands? I just watched you walking. Yeah. I'm like, dude, it's okay if you didn't. I just want you to make sure you're clean, man. But it's just funny. Like, we need to recognize when I'm stepping into a situation, it's like, you got to bring the details. You got to bring in the information and be very specific about what's going on. Otherwise, the person's needing that. And then how do we set expectations for where we go from here if I can't tell you, here's what you did and here's where we go. And in Crucial Accountability, the book, another good one, they talk about describing the gap. And this disassociates the person from the behavior. So if you say, hey, I'm noticing, hey, our goal is this, and I've noticed that your performance, or you've kind of fallen here. Help me understand, why there is a gap here. Explain that to me. What is your vantage point on that? And if you can disassociate that, it makes people less defensive about what's going on, and they can tell you exactly what it is. But if you say, hey, you haven't been doing what you need to be doing, now it becomes more personal.
Yeah. Hey,
I'm noticing some of these calls that have been run. I'm noticing this is our standard and this is where we're at. Help me understand, what's going on. And then that makes people less defensive, be more willing to tell you what's going on, because it's not personal. It's
right.
It's the thing.
Yeah. It's not an attack on who you are as an individual or an employee. It's kind of separating the two.
Right.
And sometimes I think people need our help in doing that, in separating the two.
Yeah, people definitely need help with that. And I think even we need help with that, making sure that if you don't know how to separate the gap, then it is the person doing the thing versus it's just work. And I have a hard time with that. I sometimes have a hard time, like if I do a bad job on a training or something doesn't go right, I'm like, dang, I suck. I can't believe I did that. And it's versus I just had a bad meeting. I didn't do exactly what I planned to. How do I need to do that? It doesn't make me any less of a person, but sometimes it can make you feel like that. And if you're the one coaching somebody and if you're not using the right dialogue, you can use the dialogue that makes it feel like it's the person and not just a behavior. And so as for my managers out there, I have to recognize it is my responsibility to use the right dialogue, the right strategies to help the person grow in the direction that we want them to go and they want to go, and help them get there, because we have a big responsibility. We could do it improperly and cause more problems than were there originally before.
Which is why I think Dewey chose it to be one of the fundamentals, is
For
because one thing we talked about at the beginning, I think, was that people are not skilled for these types of conversations. So most of us have not had models of appropriate conflict resolution. So, unless you were taught specifically how to navigate these difficult conversations, or you had parents who just knocked it out of the park in front of you with how to handle difficult conversations, most of us don't have the skills that we need to have these types of conversations appropriately or productively. Hence the reason why we've mentioned 5 books here today that give you strategies for this, because people know that. They know that people don't have the skills to deal with conflict.
Most people don't know how to have hard conversations because it's typically avoided. Why would I just have that false harmony?
It's uncomfortable.
Fun.
Yeah, they're uncomfortable. We don't know how to deal with them. And so we just tap out. And I think that is where it becomes really important to recognize I don't have the skills, but I can get the skills. I can practice the skills. I can work on the skills. And being able to go to a place of curiosity and separating the technician or the person from them as a human is that's something that you have to work on, to go to that place first. Help me understand. I think the more tools you can put in your toolkit, the better. I feel like we've tried to give you 9,000.
You've got a lot of strategies. I think that's the whole point, is conflict is really tough. And if we haven't been taught how to deal with that up to this point, then we've come to our own coping strategies, and everybody approaches conflict differently. Some people are going to avoid it. Some people attack right on, and a lot of people are just in between.
Yeah.
And maybe you've attended classes, you've read books already, or you've had a great mentor or somebody that's modeled it for you. Maybe it's your parent, and you're like, man, they do a really good job with that. You just kind of find your way.
Yeah.
Something that Brandon used to always say to me all the time is Nobody shows up to do a bad job.
Yep.
Like not a single person at work, a spouse, they don't just wake up and be like, I'm going to piss my wife off today. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a great day.
Yep.
Nobody's showing up, hopping on the phones or in purchasing down there. They don't just show up like, I'm going to just jack this up today. Nobody does. So when there's a gap that's there, somebody's not performing at the level they need to, I'm not meeting my wife in the way that I need to, of course there's going to be conflict. Mm-hmm. There's a gap there. And if I have a problem with my wife, if there's something that comes up and it's like, hey, we're not meeting in this zone, she didn't do that on purpose.
Right.
And I don't think that she does. But when we're in the conversation, it's just like there's a gap here, mm-hmm. and you're passionate about it. And it goes both ways. It's like, hey, how can I approach this and make sure that I say I care about this relationship? I want it to go in a positive direction. Can we talk through this? Mm-hmm. Can we figure out what it is? And if you get too passionate, it's like maybe we need to take a break.
Yep.
And that's one thing with me and old Susanator. We can get passionate about things back and forth, and it can be challenging when you're passionate about something to stay calm, mm-hmm. and just talk through it. I know sometimes if I'm too calm, it can make her more mad, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I love you, but not. And it could be the same thing for you and Michael. Is like, I like to solve it right there in the moment, and that's not always the best answer. Mm-hmm. And just because I like to solve it in the moment doesn't mean that my wife wants to solve it in the moment. Maybe we do need to take a break. And so I feel like after many years of marriage, there's things that you learn about the other person that you recognize I need to adjust myself to meet her where she's at. Otherwise, it's both of us you're in a stalemate. Yep. And it's just like, you just going to be you and I'm going to be me. Well, it don't have to be like that. Mm-hmm. Marriage is that give and take, as they say.
And at the end of the day, that's not what we want.
Right.
It's, I think it is. It's liberating to me to some extent, because I am a conflict avoider, that, in just the basic statement that conflict is neither good or bad. It just is. It's going to be there. Anytime we bring people together, there's going to be conflict. So I don't really have the choice to avoid it all the time, because it's going to continue to be a part of my life. It's going to continue to be a part of all of our lives.
Right.
And so having the skills to be able to navigate it, I think, is one of the biggest things we can do for ourselves, because we're always going to come into conflict with people, always.
For sure.
And avoiding it forever is not going. Plus, too, that's not fair to you. It's really not. It's not fair for me to put my needs and my wants and my opinions to the side because I'm afraid to speak them. I do have good things to say. I have good things to offer. And so I should feel like I have enough skills to be able to bring those things to the table. He says in Think Again, and this quote has really made me do a lot of thinking about my avoidance of conflict. The absence of conflict is not harmony, it's apathy.
Yes. I love that quote in that book.
I was like, okay, because apathy, if you needed to look it up like I did, because I always sympathy, apathy, all the things.
Yep.
So apathy means like, I don't care. I lack feelings or concerns around a particular situation, person, topic. And so when I read that, what I feel is all these years I've been avoiding conflict, thinking that it was in the best interest for restoring harmony or having harmony with people, when really it was saying that the conversation I'm avoiding happening is not important enough to me. And
is that how you really felt?
That's like a smack in the face. I think it definitely makes me think about the conversations that I've avoided in the past. I thought that I was doing the right thing by keeping the peace. But really what it's saying is that's not what you're doing. The absence of conflict is not harmony. It's apathy. It's admitting to yourself and to the other person that I don't care enough about this to talk about it. And that is a hard pill to swallow if you are a conflict avoider.
I almost feel like you have a big heart. I almost feel like initially it's I care about the other person and maintaining harmony with this person. So I'll take the heaviness of carrying this burden around so that they don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how I would interpret that, at least for you. I mean, I could be way off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Am I in left field?
No, I think that that's true. And I think that for a long time, I thought that was the right thing to do. But I think this makes me think if it's important enough to the relationship, then I should be courageous enough to have the difficult conversation because I do care. And by avoiding it, basically that's saying I don't care enough. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to not care enough.
Sure.
Particularly about certain relationships. I don't ever want to feel like I'm not caring enough to bring the things to the table that need to be talked about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Conflict is tough.
Oh, yes.
All I know is I love my wife. I love my wife. We have been together a long time, and I know you and Michael have been together for a while, and I feel like I've learned so much about conflict, not just at work, but just through relationships, and that lady puts up with a lot of things with me, and I appreciate it. But I think those learning moments that I've learned through our marriage, it's helped me in, the day-to-day here of being patient and recognizing that, there are different communication styles. And I think that's one piece that I've learned here at work that's helped me at home going the other way is through DISC.
Yeah.
Learning that she needs certain things. And I'm made aware when I forget that there's a gap here. Mm-hmm. I'm missing something. Because if you just think you're just going to live your life and just think that everybody thinks like you're dead wrong. Yeah. Customers don't think like you. Your coworkers don't think like you.
Nope.
Some of them are more blatantly obvious, and then others are a little mysterious and different. People are cool. Mm-hmm. There's so much to learn. There's always something to learn from everybody around you. So if you can approach a moment of conflict, recognizing there's something to learn, it's going to make me better. Mm-hmm. What is it, and how can I find common ground with people? I think that's always helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the biggest things we talk about is recognizing that the person sitting across from you does not think the same way you do.
For sure.
We cannot go into a conversation thinking that the other person sees and views things the exact same way that we do.
I mean, I don't think about Chris Hemsworth the same way that you do. I definitely don't, and he's not come. I mean, I like Thor. He's probably my favorite superhero,
See?
but I don't think he's going to save me in the zombie apocalypse.
I think that you could be surprised.
I'll let you be surprised about that. All right, rapid fire recap time because we talked a lot about conflict today.
Gosh, I don't even know where to start.
We're gonna go with it.
Okay.
Okay, so conflict. It's neither good nor bad. It's how we manage it. And when we approach conflict, we need to recognize, hey, some thoughts. What do I want for this other person? What do I want for this relationship? That's always key important. Be careful in conflict. Don't generalize things. Bring examples to the table so they know how to move on past this. What's the best way to approach conflict? Be assertive. Don't be non-assertive or aggressive. If you're aggressive or you just keep stuff on the inside, you're going to have to make some adjustments. It'll always help you. Be a good passive listener, which is basically active listening. Really listen to what they're saying. Ask questions to understand. Sometimes one or two solid points versus many small, weaker ones will have more weight in the conversation with people. Can I paraphrase? Can I label things back to them? Can I mirror the person so that I can understand where they're coming from? And ultimately, conflict is about we didn't see eye to eye. There's a gap here. How can we figure out to work on that together and come to a resolution? Maybe you got to give some things up, they got to, but at the end of the day, it's, hey, we're doing this for a relationship. You're doing this for an organization. We've got to come to some type of answer, and no answer is not an answer. Mm-hmm. We got to figure that out.
Okay, I'll add.
Please do.
Look for a mutual purpose. Find something that you guys can agree upon. Move to action. Make sure that when you get done with this conversation, I know what I'm going to leave doing and the other person knows what they're going to leave doing. Dialogue is not decision making, so make sure you follow up. Don't do statements. They help you to make your intentions clear. What I don't want is this. What I do want is this. Starting with the facts, which Rob already kind of talked about that for a little bit. But starting with the facts, then telling your story. And at the end of the day, ask questions. Have questions ready to go so that you can just really be curious about where the other person is coming from and be able to hear their point of view.
Love that.
Whew.
Teamwork.
I know. Teamwork makes the dream work. My hands are sweaty.
It's okay.
Okay. So we decided we were going to change the question.
Zombie apocalypse.
That's right. So our question for you to answer in the Q&A has literally nothing to do with conflict, but everything to do with who, famous person, dead or alive, would you want with you during the zombie apocalypse?
Yes, that is conflict right there. The zombies are coming to get you.
Oh my God.
Hey guys, we appreciate y'all spending time with us today. Hey, of course, add us, like, subscribe on good old Spotify or Apple. We would love to have you. If there's any requests that you might have about topics, hit us up on easydoesit at Morris-Jenkins.com. Or if you're a good old Morris-Jenkins employee, hit us up on Teams. We'll usually post and let you guys know when we release new episodes, usually about every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Our last Corey episode was a big hit, had a lot of good comments from that, and hopefully you guys learned some things about conflict today to help you move forward.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful 2 weeks, everyone, until we are together again. Thank you for listening. Until then, peace, love, and easy does it.
Hey, appreciate y'all.